Poštovani gledalci, vi pratite novo izdanje emisije Intervju nedelje. Ovo je produkcija Srpska priča, ja sam Olivera Manojlović-Štrbac. Večeras imam čast da razgovaram sa gospodinom Barryjem Letuchyjem. Pričat ćemo o temi koja je uzdrmala možda javnost. Koliko je to uopšte otišlo u javnost kao tema, to je svakako jedna od priča o kojoj ćemo pominjati večeras. Naime, gospodin Barry Letuchy je profesor istorije i političkih nauka na Gradskom univerzitetu New Yorka, City University of New York, ali ono što je još važnije jeste da je on jedan od direktora Jasenovac Istraživačkog instituta ili Instituta za istraživanje zločina u Jasenovcu, kako god, i da se jedna konferencija održala, 22. na 23. april 2023. godine u Beogradu. Bila je ovo prva konferencija ovoga tipa koja je održana u Beogradu, bilo je učesnika iz 8 zemalja i ovaj intervju, pretpostavit ćete, svakako će biti na engleskom jeziku, a mi ćemo se kao produkcija potruditi da svi možete da čujete šta nam je to zaista profesor rekao. Naime, nacrt rezolucije Međunarodne konferencije o genocidu u fašističkoj nezavisnoj državi Hrvatskoj za vreme Drugog svjetskog rata je takođe bio predočen, učesnicima ove konferencije 23. aprila 2023. godine i ta je rezolucija jednoglasno usvojena tog istog dana u Beogradu u Srbiji. Tačke ove rezolucije možete da poslušate u jednom drugom videu, koji će prethoditi ovom sada. To je 7 tačaka, 7 zaključaka konferencije koje su sadržani u ovoj rezoluciji. Ovo će biti poznato kao Beogradska rezolucija. O svemu tome takođe možete da čujete i u tom prethodnom videu, a mi ćemo večeras da razgovaramo sa gospodinem Letuchyjem o njegovom iskustvu na ovom projektu, o njegovim motivima, o tome šta ga je pokrenulo. Mi ćemo sada razgovarati na engleskom jeziku i nadam se da ćete pravovremeno dobiti i prevod titlovani prevod ovog razgovora. Preporučujem da poslušate jer je ovu konferenciju pratila jedna veoma specifična priča, jedna afera, da je značajan broj učesnika u stvari dobijao uznemirujuće pozive, odnosno pretnje telefonom, šta će im se zaista desiti, odnosno da će biti u opasnosti ukoliko učestvuju na ovoj konferenciji. Naravno, to su bili anonimni pozivi, ne zna se ko stoji iza toga, ali nekoliko učesnika je odustalo od dolaska na konferenciju upravo iz tih razloga. Mr. Letuchy, first of all, thanks for coming to Serbia. Thanks for giving your effort to this project, Jasenovac Research Institute, which is really a specific project. You have partly Serbian or Montenegrin origins, yes. But you are also you have also Jewish origins, and your family is from Eastern Europe, and probably parts of your family were faced with the Holocaust during the Second World War.
Most definitely, yes.
Yeah. So you are very close to this topic, not just because of your interest, but because of your family history. Let me tell you, dear friends, dear audience, Mr. Barry Letuchy was the chairman of the conference that was held last Saturday and Sunday in Belgrade, and the name of this conference was, official name, Voices of Jasenovac, Common and Conflicting Narratives. It was an international conference on genocide in the independent state of Croatia from 1941 till 1945 with scholars from 8 countries. And it resulted in the first resolution on genocide in the independent state of Croatia, which is now being referred to as the Belgrade Resolution. Barry Letuchy is actually the executive director and founder of the Jasenovac Research Institute, which was the sponsor of the conference. He is also co-president of the Holocaust Memorial Committee. Both organizations are based in New York. I told them already in Serbian that you are a professor of history and political science at the City University of New York. Mr. Letuchy, what were your motives, first of all? What's your motivation to work, to give your efforts, to try to find out the truth and spread this true story about this genocide that really happened during the Second World War over Serbian, Jewish and Gypsy population, Roma population in independent state of Croatia?
First of all, I'm trained as a historian, so I work as a historian, I teach history. And in my studies, I was interested in the subject of, well, my field is modern Eastern European history, actually, or really modern European history is what I did my PhD exams on. So I was drawn to this topic because I saw that there was a big hole in the study of the history of Eastern Europe that needed to be filled. It was a hole that was largely due to the fact that the subject of the Holocaust in Yugoslavia was not really covered in the literature, in the historical literature, and was not really ever discussed in studies in graduate schools in the United States, and yet was of such great importance in understanding the modern history of Eastern Europe, but of Yugoslavia in particular. And as this coincided, my studies coincided with the breakup of Yugoslavia and a vast amount of information about Yugoslavia that was largely false or distorted by this lack of information about the Holocaust in Yugoslavia. I immediately saw that this was a subject that I needed to work on. I didn't realize I'd be spending 30 years working on it. But I didn't actually plan on going into this field. I was really more interested in the history of Russia, actually, originally. But as time went on, and since I was really trained as a generalist in modern European history, I realized that this was a subject that had to be, that somebody had to deal with, because nobody was dealing with it properly. Universities were not dealing with it, Holocaust institutions were not dealing with it, and most definitely governments were not dealing with it properly. And so there was a great deal of misinformation, what we might call false narratives about the history of Yugoslavia, because without this information about these war crimes in the independent state of Croatia, a false narrative had been created in the 1990s, especially, which portrayed the Serbs as actual genocidalists, right, as the promoters of genocide, and the Croats as being innocent victims of Serbian aggression. And so this was and of course, all of the other nationalities somehow, they never did anything wrong. They were completely innocent, and the Serbs had oppressed everybody. And this was actually something very common to hear at the time, that Yugoslavia was some sort of prison house of nations where the Serbs oppressed everybody else. So you had, these instant experts like Misha Glenny and all of these people who were basically lying. They were creating false narratives about the history of Yugoslavia and of the history, and especially of the history of the individual nations within Yugoslavia. Then, of course, the fact that the Holocaust institutions, which existed or were being created in the 1990s, repeatedly portrayed false information, very false information about the Holocaust in Yugoslavia, which was outrageous. It was an outrage. But rather than just getting angry at something like this, I wanted to find a creative solution to this, a constructive and positive solution. The only constructive, or the only possible constructive solution, was to create an NGO devoted to this subject, promoting research, promoting education, and promoting commemoration, a culture of commemoration that would overcome the incredible, if you're a historiographer of this subject, you cannot tell honestly that there was anything but a complete distortion and absence of historical narrative about the subject of the Holocaust in Yugoslavia, and in particular, the crimes of genocide in the independent state of Croatia. So I would say that combination of my historical research, my profession as a historian, and also this outrageous distortion of the history of the Holocaust together is what combined to motivate me to pursue this topic, or in the way that we pursued it, which was to create a totally independent, a truly non-governmental institution that doesn't receive money at all from any government or any, I would say, active participant in political discourse. We held a conference in 1997, the first international conference in New York, and we focused on things like we focused on building a network of historians and people who were advocates of this and who were interested in the culture, a culture of commemoration and education. And over time, we published books, and we've held 21 conferences over the past 22 years. We've held 21 conferences. We didn't have a conference in the year of COVID, 2020, but we held 21 consecutive, with the exception of the COVID year, we held 21 conferences. This is the 21st this year, and this is the first time we held it in Belgrade, because it was time to bring this subject into the into Europe, because of the, it seems that Europe is the bigger problem right now than the United States. The United States was the bigger problem in the past, but Europe is the biggest problem today, because there is still a great deal of disinformation, propaganda in existing European institutions, which, it's crazy how this topic is so easily distorted by I would call them the NATO countries, largely, for political reasons, obviously, and it's really, they're guilty of something really terrible in distorting that story.
Regarding this political influence of the European countries and NATO organization, you are faced with, let's say, kinds of troubles. You were faced with all these troubles. What kinds of troubles you were faced with, and have you ever tried to make a political influence over Serbian or some other government by your emails or your I don't know?
No, we're not affiliated with any political institution. We're not affiliated with any government. We need, that doesn't, of course, we wish to cooperate with all governments. We're ready to cooperate with any government in the world that wants to promote research, education, and commemoration of this subject. But the Belgrade Resolution, which we produced out of the conference this year, last weekend, Saturday and Sunday, April 22nd, 23rd, this conference, the resolution from this conference states both the basis of our ideas that were based on the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights from 1948, that we affirm that genocide did take place in the independent state of Croatia during 1941-1945, and that there are certain remedial steps or remedial actions that need to be done in order to properly present and discuss this topic, such as the need for an International Day of Commemoration on April 22nd. I can talk about that in greater detail. The need to oppose the rehabilitation of criminals, of Ustašo criminals, or of anyone who was even a collaborator with the perpetrators of genocide in the independent state of Croatia. And also the need for further research on this topic, particularly the opening of archives that have been closed, the need for institutions throughout Europe to take a more serious approach than they have up till now to the question of genocide in the independent state of Croatia during World War II, because without doing that, we get these false narratives, these conflicting narratives that don't that whitewash or suppress or minimize the crimes that were committed, and that lead to actually more conflict in the region, because there can't be peace, there can't be justice, there can't be reconciliation in the Balkans, among the peoples of the Balkans, if you do not recognize the crimes of genocide. If you don't, then you don't want peace, you don't want justice, and you don't want reconciliation. And that's really absolutely necessary to push in the European Parliament, in European societies, and in European institutions. If you don't care about the genocide, then don't talk about peace and don't try to impose any political solutions, because they will be unjust and they will be destructive. They will be against reconciliation. This is a very serious topic.
Mm-hmm. But nobody wants to take over this responsibility, especially Croatian government. You know about the fact that sometimes, it's not actually sometimes, it started to be a common practice. Actually, there is a fact that the Croatian government finances, and they are also presented on a commemoration to Ustaša fighters in Austria, in Bleiburg, which also involves.
Well, that fortunately has been made illegal now. They don't. Bleiburg, you can't hold that commemoration anymore in Bleiburg. It's been outlawed by Austria in the last couple of years, fortunately.
But they still go there.
They may go there, but they're not supposed to. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's against the law, mm-hmm. which is a good law, because the idea of rehabilitating fascism. I mean, haven't we learned anything in European history if we haven't learned that much, that fascism should not be rehabilitated? Then we are living in we have the potential for more barbarism in Europe. This is why this is important. I'm not attacking the Croatian government. Actually, I'm not interested in doing that. I'm just interested in establishing the fact that there was genocide in Croatia, and that all European governments need to recognize that. And if they don't recognize it, then there is no possible solution for reconciliation or peace in the Balkans, because this is a national security issue. The current state of Croatia, whether they consider themselves a successor state to the independent state of Croatia or not, and I know that they don't.
They do not.
They do not. But that's not even the issue, really. The issue is, did genocide take place in the independent state of Croatia? That's the issue.
That is the trouble, because Croatian public, people from public, people from historical institutes, faculties, universities, they neglect the facts and they do a negation of genocide. So what I say about Ustaša movement is mostly that it was a legal movement of Croatian wish to have an independent state after all so many centuries being under different kinds of occupation. So the trouble is that most of Croatian people accept Ustaša movement as a liberation movement.
Well, that's the conflicting narrative. That's the conflicting narrative that we're talking about in the conference title. I'm not specifically attacking the Croatian government. Let's step back for a moment and take a look at the fact that Yugoslavia, there were 2 or 3 Yugoslavias, if you wish, you could say 3, the idea of Yugoslavia was to create a larger federation in the Balkans that would protect these small nations from external domination, external interference, and so on. Of course, it didn't work that way. Historically, we have to say that even though the Federation of Peoples in Southeastern Europe was a good idea, it actually did not work because the larger powers in Europe and in the world, including the United States, ultimately destabilized and destroyed these federations. So that idea didn't work. Now we have separate Croatia, separate Serbia, and all these other small Balkan states, which are mini-states, very small states, under enormous pressure Croatia too is under enormous pressure. You shouldn't think that only Serbia is under enormous pressure. Little Croatia has about half the population of Serbia. It's not a large country. Both of these countries are in a sense under the physical laws of gravity, dominated by the more powerful European countries and the United States and NATO as a whole. And it's not correct to think that Croatia is an independent actor. Neither is Serbia. Serbia tries to be an independent actor as much as it can, but both countries are actually very much under the pressure and control of the more powerful European and American states. So I think that we can say that it's not really up to Croatia. It's not up to the Croatian government whether or not we should recognize genocide in wartime Croatia. It's not up to them. It's up to the international community. It's up to governments around the world and peoples around the world. It's up to humanity to come to the right conclusion about this. The question is, was there genocide? Was there not genocide? You decide. People, humanity. Do you want to live under barbarism, or do you want to live under civilization? Do you want to live in a peaceful civilization where there is actually cooperation among peoples? And if you don't want to recognize genocide, then you are voting for barbarism and instability. I say we should cooperate. We should take this calmly and not take it as personal. The Ustaša are not alive. Very soon, the last child survivors will not be alive to discuss this. but it's up to, it's a generational issue that will continue to exist. So it's up to each generation, this generation and the next generation, to decide, what do you want to do? Do you want to deny the historical record, or do you want to acknowledge it and try to work from there? That's the purpose of the Belgrade resolution. We created this resolution so that we have a starting point. Genocide did occur. We believe in human rights. We believe in the United Nations Declaration on Universal Human Rights. We want to move forward with a clean record where there can be peace and security and cooperation and even ultimately reconciliation. So you can take a positive view or you can take a negative view. I take a positive view. I'm very optimistic. Why not move forward on the historical record? Why not recognize these crimes now? Why wait? You want to wait another 50 years? I think that's idiotic. Why? We want peace and we want security now. This is a national security issue for Serbia. Serbia is not going to allow this historical this historical event to be submerged as it was in the 1990s, and Serbs were portrayed as genocidal criminals and the Croats were innocent victims. No, we're going to set the record straight, and we're going to move on from there. And so it's not. We're not blaming the entire people of Croatia. There were lots of good Croatians in World War II, and there were there's lots of good Croatians today. And I'm just speaking as a human being to other human beings. Let's do the right thing and let's proceed from there, because it's necessary. If you don't recognize it, you don't want peace, and you don't want security, and you don't want human rights. So the choice is yours. But we're moving forward. We have the Belgrade resolution completed, and we're going to move forward and try to push that and try to win people who believe that fascism is in fact, because that's in our resolution, that fascism is in fact a threat to the human race, and we should not rehabilitate it, we should not ignore it, and we should oppose it. And therefore that means also opposing the crimes of genocide that were committed by fascists, because that was part of their ideology and that was one of their goals and one of their reasons for existing. So let's do the right thing and recognize the crimes of genocide in the independent state of Croatia.
Mr. Letuchy, I've got a few questions about this political influence. I know that you do not have any aim or any goal or any task, something like that, in your program to make any kind of political influence, and you don't want to interfere in that.
That's right.
But the thing is that there was a chart of resolution against denying genocide in Jasenovac, but Serbian parliament didn't take it into consideration. Oh, wow. And it happened a few years ago, and still some organizations are trying to take this document into the parliament, to put it on a special session to decide about it, to discuss about it, but there is no interest, or might be a huge political pressure over Serbian government not to take into consideration such a document like a resolution against denying genocide in Jasenovac and independent state of Croatia. What do you think about that? Regarding the fact that denying of genocide over Armenians is forbidden in France. Never mind, it happened 100 years ago, but still French parliament decided it's forbidden to deny Turkish genocide in World War I over Armenians. So why not this kind of resolution in Serbia, or maybe in France or Germany or somewhere else? Well, we do not expect Croatia to do something like that.
I do expect them eventually to recognize that genocide was committed by Croatia.
Is it kind of utopia?
No, I believe that Croatia will have to conform to the decisions of the international community. if it wants to exist as a country, if it wants to exist as a people, they're going to have to conform to human rights and to humanity. And I believe I have enough faith in humanity that I believe Croatians will, in fact, do that eventually. But it will not start with Croatia. It will start outside of Croatia, and it will eventually absorb Croatia as a movement for human rights. I mean, we all have to recognize basic human rights as declared in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations in 1948, and by recognizing the historical record. I mean, it's just it's a shame that it took so long, that it's taking so long. I have confidence that the Serbian government will do the right thing. I think they know what they...
Because if it doesn't happen in Serbia, what's the point?
Yes, of course. I mean, Serbia obviously has to do the right thing.
The first one.
You know, let's not blame people. Let's not get into blaming or demonizing. I don't want to demonize anybody. I don't want to demonize anybody in Serbia. I don't want to demonize anybody in Croatia. I don't want to demonize anyone anywhere. I just want governments to do the right thing, but it's going to require scholars, it's going to require historians, it's going to require people, the population, experts, but the general population has to demand this from their government, that their government treat this subject with the full seriousness that it deserves, with the full, and I think that they will. I mean, I'm not pessimistic, and I'm not, getting overly concerned about that.
Let's face the fact that actually it seems that our parliament and our government is faced with a huge pressure. Now the question is, what kind of pressure they have because of this matter? Probably
pressure works both ways. It's a double-edged sword. We can pressure the governments that are pressuring Serbia. We're an international non-governmental organization. That's why we took it on. We didn't want to be, have our hands tied by any government, by the United States, we've never taken any money from any government. We're truly an independent NGO, and we're reaching out to a larger body of scholars, a larger body of organizations. We're confident that our resolution is a good starting point. It's not by any means. It's just a starting point for establishing the right narrative on the Holocaust in former Yugoslavia, and also especially in the independent state of Croatia. I mean, we can pressure. It's not even a matter of pressure. It's just a matter of conversation, of research, of publication, of education. We can influence the larger picture, which will then influence the more narrow picture of what's going on in the Balkans.
Yeah, but the trouble is, this pressure comes from somewhere. So where does it come from? The first question. And the other question, during the conference, actually, there was a press conference in a media center in Belgrade, where I met for the second time Mr. Gideon Grive from Yad Vashem, the international expert for genocide and Holocaust. And he was researching Auschwitz, also Jasenovac. He wrote a very great monography about Jasenovac as the Auschwitz of Balkans. And he made a connection between the things that happened, events that happened during the Second World War, and the end of the Croatian plan to destroy Serbian population during the 90s.
Right.
So this kind of connection made him a lot of troubles. He didn't even want to give to say a few words, to give any statement to media, And he said, no more interviews.
Right.
I have faced a lot of troubles because
Right.
of the things I did.
That's true.
So, who makes this kind of pressure? Is it Vatican? Is it Germany? Is it NATO? Is it Croatian government? Who makes troubles to these people?
I can only speak to the facts that I know. Yes, Dr. Greif has really done a tremendous amount of work, a great deal of good work, because he truly cares. He is first and foremost, he's a world famous scholar on Auschwitz, and that's where he made his reputation. That's why he was a high-profile person at Yad Vashem in Israel, why he taught in Israel for so many decades. And then he decided he wanted to research the Holocaust in the Balkans. And he wanted to talk about the crimes of genocide in the independent state of Croatia. In other words, he extended himself into another field of research outside of his primary field of research, but it was closely related to the Holocaust as a whole. And for some reason, certain individuals and institutions decided that, oh no, you can't do that. We're going to censor you. We're going to attack you. We're going to essentially launch a smear campaign against you. Well, it's one thing to criticize, the literature. If you want to criticize his books, that's fine. That's legitimate. You have, as historians, have a right to do that. But what was done was not an academic or scholarly critique of his books. What was done instead was a personal ad hominem smear campaign. You could compare it to the Stalin trials of the 1930s. You can compare it to the McCarthyism in the United States. I would say that what was done to Dr. Greif is not only illegitimate, but criminal. It's politically criminal. Now, as far as I know, the entire campaign.
What is that, humiliation? What
Oh yes, it's an attempt to humiliate him, to destroy his income. I mean, it has nothing. There is no legitimacy. There is no legitimacy to attacking the man, the person who is publishing books. You could say the books are no good. Okay, criticize the books, but don't destroy the man. That is illegitimate. That's criminal, what's being done. As far as I know, I mean, I only know the facts that I know. The facts I know is that there were 5 articles published in Haaretz, the newspaper in Israel, which considers itself a progressive publication. I consider it really a despicable smear, yellow journalism. It's yellow journalism, what we call yellow journalism, because they attacked him in an attempt to destroy his reputation.
It's kind of cheap propaganda.
It's cheap propaganda, because it's so clearly not legitimate, right? It's so clearly immoral, unethical, unprincipled. You don't do that to somebody. If you have an issue with his writings, you put your own writings in print and you put your name on it, and you don't hide behind yellow journalism like certain certain individuals in Israel are doing right now, because obviously Haaretz published what they were told to publish. They did what certain people in the government, in the foreign ministry in Israel, decided they needed to do. I'm willing to fight on this issue. I am going to fight on this issue. I will not allow that kind of illegitimate, personal McCarthyism, Stalinism, whatever you want to call it, this kind of political gangsterism to go on. I mean, it's not even that. It's just immoral. It's unethical. Don't you see that? This is gangsterism. Do we want to live in a gangster world? Do we want to live in a world of gangsterism? I don't. I don't know about other people. Maybe some people love political gangsters. I don't. I'm against it. That's why I've never worked for the government in my entire life. I mean, I do work. Okay, I have to take that back. I'm a professor. I'm an adjunct professor in the City University of New York. So I do draw a salary from the government. That's true. Okay, I apologize. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to lie. You can call me a liar now. But it's just outrageous that. But as far as we know, it's all coming from Israel. Now, I don't think it's the official position of the Prime Minister. I don't believe the Prime Minister believes this. I don't believe the Holocaust institutions in Israel believe this. I believe it's coming from someone, apparently in the Foreign Ministry, who is unethical and who is perhaps being paid to do this. And who has the motive to do this? There's only one place that has the motive to pay someone to do something like this, right? Do we know who that is? Yes, I think we do.
Well, you have close connections to both prime victims in Second World War genocide.
Yes.
On a territory of former Yugoslavia. It's Serbian origins and Jewish origins, so you know that both people suffered a lot of troubles, a lot of murders and genocide and war crime over them. So the fact is that we should be together in this matter.
Yes.
We should fight together in this matter because, especially because of the fact that in Washington Museum of Genocide, while it was opening, and you told me this
yes.
fact,
yes.
there was no any concentration camp or any marked place on a territory of former Yugoslavia that something like a war crime.
That was in the 1990s.
Genocide
yeah.
in 1990s happened here.
Mm-hmm.
Even former Croatian president Franjo Tuđman was invited into opening of this Washington Museum of Genocide. Mm-hmm. No Romas were invited.
Nope.
I don't know about Serbians, probably not
No Serbs.
Too.
No. The Serbs were only invited to go to jail.
Yeah, we were genocidal part, of course, mm-hmm. even when we suffered genocide. And on the other hand, I think that the Jewish community refused to be presented on this.
That's right. The Yugoslav Jewish community protested quite strongly the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum when in the 1990s for doing all of these things because the Jewish community in Yugoslavia knew it was all lies. The U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum was established in 1993, and yes, it presented a false narrative of the Holocaust by not including Yugoslavia. They excluded it. On the map, on the wall in the museum, it showed all the concentration camps, all of the killing sites in Europe, including the Soviet Union. And for Yugoslavia, it was on the map, but it was just white. In other words, nothing happened there. There were no victims. There were no crimes committed. Everything was just so beautiful and so happy, and everybody was just going about their business, and there was no fighting and no killing and no genocide. And also, well, I mean, if you read carefully the way the museum depicted things, Serbs were not victims of anything. The only time that they made reference to Serbs, they called them Yugoslavs, which was a way in which to whitewash the whole story of genocide against Serbs. Yes, they never talked about, and they even showed photographs of Roma from Yugoslavia, but they didn't at that time, they didn't even identify them as being Romas in the independent state of Croatia. And they didn't talk about the persecution of the Jews by the independent state of Croatia either. So what emerged from this and what this taught us was that you can't rely on institutions like that which are controlled by the government. Who told us that? The director of the museum, Michael Berenbaum, told us. He was very honest. He's a very honest and sincere and genuinely brilliant man and scholar who told us at the 1997 conference that the United States State Department, our foreign ministry, decided what was going to be in that exhibit and what was not going to be in that exhibit. Now, why is this bad? It's bad because it generated a false narrative that is not benign. It is not harmless. It created great harm because it allowed a false story to be told that then allowed governments to demonize the Serbian people. And so the Serbs were demonized, just like African Americans had been demonized in American history. In American history, we have something called minstrelry, the minstrel shows. The minstrel shows were a form of entertainment in which African Americans could be portrayed as idiots, as vile, low people. It encouraged racism. It was a culture of racism in the United States that existed from the 1830s all the way into the mid-20th century, incredibly. And there are still people who go around in blackface trying to make fun of African Americans, even to this day. The racism in the United States has never gone away, and even though it is much better than it used to be, and that is important, I don't believe that there is really any reconciliation between African Americans and the rest of the white America. I don't believe there is. I don't think we've achieved that. And likewise,
I haven't felt it.
No,
I haven't.
no, and it's quite true. It's quite true that what the United States did was genocidal, and that's also true about the Amerindians, the native population who were exterminated. Not just in the Trail of Tears, but in so many instances throughout United States history. So this is all based on false narratives. Mm-hmm. This is all, you have to ideologically or create a false historical narrative to justify genocide.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about justification. The fact is that in this museum, according to this director of
Michael Berenbaum, he was the director at the time,
Washington Museum of Genocide, he actually told you an explanation why it happened. It was political decision by State Department.
Yes. And the State Department still controls the Holocaust Museum in Washington.
Not knowing or ignoring the facts from the Second World War could be a kind of justification for Croatian operations in 1995 of ethnic cleansing with the elements of genocide. But
it couldn't have happened without it.
Yeah.
You couldn't have demonized the Serbian people if they were recognized as victims of genocide. You couldn't have done it. You couldn't have carried out all of these military operations. And the same thing has happened now in the Ukraine. They erased the Ukrainian fascists. They sort of whitewashed them. They rehabilitated them. They said, "Oh, there's no neo-Nazism in Ukraine. Nobody wears a swastika." No, that doesn't happen. And this is not democracy. It's imperialism. It's racism. It's allowing racism. Come on, people. I mean, really. We are living in the 21st century and we don't recognize that racism and denial of genocide is wrong? Come on. We have to create a better world than the world we're living in, or else we're going to have more situations like the one in the Ukraine today, which was created as a result of this legitimization of the Nazi past in Ukraine, the fascist past of the Ukrainians, and who then were encouraged to demonize Russia, to attack the Russian language, to undermine Russian communities in eastern Ukraine, and ultimately to go to war against them. And the United States government and the NATO countries still seem to think that that's okay. But they're going to learn a very hard lesson when Russia destroys the Ukrainian regime. And NATO is defeated in this war, and they will be defeated, I can assure you of that.
Really? Well, one more topic for the end of this interview. I see your books.
By the way, my family was ethnically cleansed in pogroms out of the Ukraine. And I know exactly what happened to my family because my grandfather's sister and my grandfather's cousin, both, I'm old enough to have known both of them, and they taught me what happened. We know what happened in my family's town in Zhashkovo, or Zhashkiv as it's called today, in central Ukraine. We know what happened in Cherkasy Oblast. Exactly, I know, to the detail.
So what happened? What happened? Yes.
This was during the time of Semyon. Oh my goodness! I'm sorry. I'm so tired. I've forgotten. Semyon. It was during the time when the father of Ukrainian extreme nationalism was in power.
Bandera.
No. This is before that. Bandera was the next generation. This actually happened during the Russian Civil War. And some people say 100,000 Jews were killed. Some people say 200,000 Jews were killed. But they came into our town, and if you did, and they said Jews are only good for their money. So this is what the Ukrainians said. Ukrainians were against the Russians, the Jews, the Poles, and they wanted to. But this is even before Nazism. This is 1919. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're talking about 1919, and in 1919 they said they had already the what you might call proto-Nazism or proto-fascism, the ideology of this extreme nationalism that was racist and genocidal. And so they told the Jews in this town, if you don't have gold, you go to the synagogue, one of the synagogues, and we will take care of you there. We were a wealthy family, so we had gold, and we paid for our lives in gold. But all of our property was confiscated, and they killed 2 members of my family anyway. The poor Jews who did not have gold were herded into the synagogues, and they were burned alive to death. This is not. I did not read this in a book. I did not need to read this in a book. I had eyewitnesses in my family who saw it happen. So I know exactly what happened. And to whitewash this, as has been in recent years, is like a bad dream that is recurring of what happened in the 1990s. The minimization and distortion of racism and genocide among not a lot of Ukrainians fought against fascism, I should say, but among the Ukrainian fascist movement and extreme nationalist movement, which has been supported by the United States and the NATO countries, this minimization permitted the extremist military and political activities of the Ukrainian government in recent years, which provoked the war with Russia, which was insane, and is still insane. I mean, I feel bad about the Ukrainians who are dying. I feel bad about the fact that Ukraine is being destroyed. But this is a consequence of this kind of false narrative, which justified what took place. It justified the extremism of the Ukrainian government in the years since 2014, and has led to this mass destruction. I don't care that the NATO countries want to lie about this, but we're going to tell the truth because we're not going to allow that kind of disinformation and that kind of Holocaust denial and genocide denial to allow this. One last thing I have to say is one of the things that also motivated me to do this is that I began to interview survivors.
Testimonies of survivors.
I collected dozens of them in the 1990s when the survivors. Yes, I produced a book in English and in German, and there's soon to be one in Serbian as well, and there will be one in other languages. I collected these testimonies. Actually, I didn't publish all of them. I have more to publish. And these were survivors who were adults during World War II. This was in the 1990s. These were people who had been in Jasenovac, who had been at various camps, Jadovno, who were child victims in various camps. I had so many interviews, and I didn't want that to go without historical analysis, but I believe I'm not saying that I'm the greatest scholar in the world. I'm not saying, you can criticize my books, I don't care, you can spit on my books if you like. But you need to take into account that this is legitimate historical research. And by knowing the people who were in these camps and knowing their story, it's a good introduction to what actually took place. I'm not saying it's the final word, it's not the last word, it's maybe not the first word, it's something in between. But it's necessary for people to have an introduction and learn about the basic facts of what happened. And so that we all recognize, I don't believe it should just be, history doesn't just belong to scholars. It does not. It belongs to the people. It belongs to everyone. And we all have a right to publish and explore these questions. And I don't want to censor anyone. I want everyone to have freedom of speech, freedom to publish, freedom to research. I am a very strong defender of freedom, of human freedom. I believe in it very strongly. And those who would criticize, who would attack a man like Gideon Greif, this is one of the worst examples of persecution for political reasons that I've ever seen in my life. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite so bad as that. Yes. So I pretty much have said everything that I need to say.
Mm-hmm. So once again, I want to remind people who watch this, the book is named Jasenovac and the Holocaust in Yugoslavia, Analysis and Survivor Testimonies, presented at the first international conference and exhibition on the Jasenovac concentration camps.
By Barry Letuchy. Yes.
This was held? When?
Oh yes, in October of 1997. I was officially the assistant organizer, but I was the main person behind the conference. Yes.
So, if people are interested in buying this book, or
I'm going to the Serbian edition an edition in Serbian is being produced now. It was not. I didn't consider that to be the most important thing to do. I did it in English and I did it in German. It's in German for 5 years now, 4 or 5 years now. So I believe that the English-speaking public and the German-speaking public needed an introductory study to the subject of crimes of genocide, and also putting it in the larger context of the history of the 20th century. It's all there. Everything that you need to know, from the Ustasha to the German occupation of Serbia to Macedonia, Bulgaria, Albanians, Bosnian Muslims, the Catholic Church, the rat lines. Everything is in this book. So it's not the deepest research, but it is a compendium, a general overview of the subject with all of these survivors who were there, who were victims, who survived somehow in various ways. And there is Jewish, and it's mostly Jewish and Serbian survivors, but there's also a Roma chapter as well. And so all of this gives you a very, very broad overview of the subject and a general view. And I think it still reads very well as a lively introduction to the subject.
Mm-hmm. I see numbers of the victims according to nationalities.
I think these are Roma victims. Roma.
Yeah.
Yes.
But Serbs, Roma, Jews, and Croats in different cities.
Yes. Well, this is just one chapter because I wrote a chapter, and so did other historians, and so did.
I've just opened the chapter "Suffering of the Roma" in Jasenovca. Several questions instead of an introduction by Dragoljub Acković.
Oh yes, he was one of the contributors to my book. Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Letuchy, first of all, or last of all, or I cannot say neither of this, but thanks for doing this for both Serbian and Jewish victims.
And Roma victims.
And Roma victims.
And all anti-fascists. All anti-fascist combatants. We should not forget them.
There is one number, I'm not sure if it's right number or not, but it was said that almost 50,000 of Croatian communists also who denied, who refused to be a part of independent state of Croatia, and its practice also suffered pain, and
I think the baseline.
They were also murdered in Jasenovca.
The baseline is 20,000 usually as a number given as killed in Jasenovca, not overall in the independent state of Croatia. I can't give you, off the top of my head, I don't know what the, for the whole of independent Croatia would be for anti-fascist Croats. But the fact that just 20,000, that, you know, as a conservative estimate, baseline estimate, 20,000 Croat anti-fascists were killed in Jasenovca, that's an enormous number when you think about it.
20,000.
20,000, even if that's a conservative number.
We can never talk about genocidal nations. It's a very wrong thing to talk about that.
That's true.
The politics and the political programs could be genocidal. The practice in battles, in wars, could be genocidal, but not the whole people, because you faced the victims' testimonies, survivor testimonies,
right.
And you probably heard that many people told that they were accepted by some Croatian families who took care of them, who preserved them till the end of the war, and so such examples we could have. But also on the other side, the majority was in some criminal side, but not important. At least this number of people were there to help these people, to support them, to save them.
Well, you know what they say, that what did Confucius say? He said that the people are the wheat and the governments are the wind. That's what Confucius wrote 2,400 years ago, right? Isn't that true? To a large extent.
5 centuries before Christ.
Yes,
something like that.
Correct.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
This was very nice conversation. Hope to see you again here in Belgrade for the second International Conference of Genocide, the second in Belgrade, but not the second.
Right, the 22nd maybe.
It could be,
yes.
The 22nd. Wish you all best.
Thank you so much.
Come back to Belgrade in a good health and with a lot of success working on this matter. Thanks to all your colleagues on this project.
Yes, it's really a collective effort, and we work with so many other organizations as well who also contribute, including those in Serbia, and we hope, and we've worked with Croatians too. We want the whole world to be united
on the side of truth.
United on the side of truth, and united in rejecting fascism and genocide.
To be civilized.
Yes.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
Thank you too, my dear friends on the other side of the camera. Hvala vam svima na praćenju. Bilo je ovo još jedno izdanje emisije Intervju nedelje. Naravno, potrudit ćemo se da pogledate ovu emisiju sa srpskim prevodom, tako da, eto, Ima ovde zaista mnogo interesantnih stvari da se čuje, da čujete koliko je teško boriti se za jednu ispravnu i pravičnu stvar, za nešto što će biti oslonac i produžetak ove civilizacije, a ne znak nekakvog mračnog, paklenog ponora, ponovnog ulaska u nacizam i fašizam, u sve ono što smo zaista mislili da se više nikada neće desiti, ali ga, nažalost, gledamo i osjećamo svakog dana. Hvala još jednom na praćenju. Prijetno.